Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Windows emulation on Android with Winlator, and Winlator just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Winlator version 3.2 is the latest update. We've got a bunch of bug fixes and improvements. They've improved the X11 cursor, added an option to create Box86 64 presets. They've improved shortcut settings and added more DX wrappers. So with this new version of Winlator, you should hopefully see some compatibility and performance improvements. It may not be earth-shattering, but there may be some. I'll drop a link to Winlator in the description below and feel free to check it out. Moving on, and we're talking about Playnite. And for those who may not be aware, Playnite is an open source game library manager with one simple goal: to provide a unified interface for all of your games, and Playnite just got a brand new update. So I've got some bad news and I've got some good news, and we'll start out with the bad news first. If you're using Playnite on Windows 7 or Windows 8, you can no longer update it. The latest updates here break compatibility for Windows 7 and Windows 8, and I'm going to assume all of the updates moving forward won't work with them. The good news is that we've got some optimizations and fixes. Controller input handling has been switched to SDL library. It does support direct input. Software tools can execute scripts. They added an option to completely disable program and add-on update checks, and even more. As for fixes, there's a couple of fixes around window size and position, and a big fix here for the emulation scanner that was importing duplicates if assigned ROMs are missing names. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Apple emulation with QEMU iOS. For those who may not be aware, QEMU iOS is an emulator for legacy Apple devices. Currently, the iPod Touch 1G and the iPod Touch 2G are supported, and this is free and open source. Now, I took a quick peek at my previous videos, and I'm not quite sure if we've talked about this one before. I want to say yes, but in the event that I haven't, well, here you go. The latest update was November 8th, and that was for the iPod Touch 2G emulation files. And if you wanted to see QEMU iOS in action, Matt Casey Bytes has you covered. I'll drop a link to his video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. Moving on, and we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Yuzu, and Yuzu just got a little bit more efficient. So as of the paid testing early access version of Yuzu, version 4020, it saves 256 megabytes of memory and improves boot time slightly. And for Linux here, it improves game startup time by 1 second, and also removes the need of 3 gigabytes of RAM during game startup and allows games to allocate memory on demand, a little bit more efficient. And on top of that, the paid testing early access version of Yuzu on Android just got a brand new update. So in this version, they've officially implemented NCE. NCE stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or native code execution, depending on how you want to interpret that. The end result here is a massive performance improvement. They say to make sure to switch to this if you are updating the app in advanced settings, debug, and CPU backend. They've also added in per game properties. Long press on any game to see a new menu with options to change per game settings, drivers, and mods. They've added in game directory management, which is very helpful if you like to keep your games in multiple folders. They've disabled write syncing on Android, which fixes crashes on Turnip for games like Red Dead Redemption and Luigi's Mansion 3. On top of the major performance boost from NCE, we've also got a minor performance boost on mobile GPUs. They added a drop shadow to the FPS counter for improving visibility. And they've also included the latest changes from Upstream Yuzu, which is the PC version. And for those of you wondering when the early access changes are going to hit the mainline build, you'll have to wait a day or two, or possibly up to a couple of weeks. It varies in terms of time here, but eventually these changes will hit the free mainline build. Moving on, and I was debating on talking about this one, but here we are. We're talking about Twitch. And it was another case of Twitch, well, being Twitch. Twitch updated their approach to sexual content and content classification labels, and things horribly backfired. So at a high level here, and without getting into too much detail, they added a brand new sexual themes label and allowed a lot of content they didn't previously, including adult-themed drawings. So needless to say, a bunch of channels started using that label and started drawing inappropriate things, or maybe appropriate because of Twitch TOS. Anyways, here a whole bunch of them ended up being banned for about 3 days. And interestingly enough, a bigger streamer got a 7-day ban for viewing said explicit material. And they say here they should have just shown nudity and got a 3-day ban. So it appears to boil down to a pretty big disparity between how that TOS was written and how it was intended to be understood versus how it was actually understood. I haven't seen Twitch release any sort of statement as of yet, and I'm assuming they're going to be releasing something pretty soon. This whole situation is just very weird and very Twitch. But moving away from that nonsense and back to emulation, next up here we're talking about Game Boy and Game Boy Advance emulation with Visual Boy Advance M, and Visual Boy Advance M just got a brand new update. It's the first update since September. So version 2.1.8 is the latest update. It's not a big update, but it does contain some fixes, including one here for disabling the status bar and properly hiding it on startup. Next up, we're quickly talking about The Last of Us Online, and today Naughty Dog announced that this game has been cancelled. The studio did not have the resources to continue on without impacting other games. Based on their situation, they said, so we had two paths in front of us. Become a solely live service game studio or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. And they chose the latter. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Would you have preferred The Last of Us Online, or would you prefer a brand new single-player game? I'm kind of agreeing with Naughty Dog on this one. I think it was a smart choice. Next up, I've got another quick one for you. If you're in the States and you're near a Costco, you may want to check out to see if the Xbox Series S is on sale. Here's a photo of one on sale for $150, which I think is a fantastic deal. Next up, another quick one. If you're a fan of Death Stranding, you might be excited to know that there's going to be a brand new Death Stranding movie. Today, Kojima Productions announced they've teamed up with A24 to make the film. According to Wikipedia, A24 is no stranger to making films. They have made a whole bunch of indie films, and I mean a whole bunch. One of the more notable ones has been The Whale, which I think received some awards. Moving on, and I've got another quick one for you. We're talking about AMD. While NVIDIA likes to keep stuff closed source, AMD doesn't. They just made FSR 3 open source, and I'm assuming some developers might really like this news. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. At a really high level, FSR 3 is designed to give you better FPS without sacrificing video quality. Moving on, and another quick one. We're talking about Resident Evil 2 First Person, and someone has just released a demo of this game in first person mode. I'll drop a link to this video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. Unfortunately, it's not the full game, but the demo itself looks pretty interesting, and there's some very interesting links in the description of that video. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today, and I had even more to talk about, but I'll talk about it tomorrow. Let me know your thoughts about anything in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.